Hey, everybody. Welcome back to What Happened to You. Today's guest is a very talented friend of mine. She's a brilliant stand-up comedian and has a new podcast called Clowncast coming out in December. This is episode 9 with Harper-Rose Drummond. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for asking me to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I couldn't help but reach out after I saw your bit on TikTok. That was hilarious.
Thank you. It's so funny because I saw yours. Honestly, yours inspired me to post mine because I was like, and I didn't even know how to really work TikTok, but I saw yours. I was like, oh, that's such a good bit. That's so badass. And I was like,
Yeah, I'm glad that you did. That's great. I feel like we had a very similar TikTok experience, and I have a bunch of questions about like TikTok and what that was like for you after you posted it. But before we get into that, the way that I kind of like to do this is just starting with the person's story and then just kind of going from there.
Okay. Yeah, no, I have no problem telling the dark tale, so it's all good.
Cool. Well, Harper, what happened to you?
Okay. Well, all right. So it happened in 2016. I went to high school in North Carolina, and I lived there for like 10 years. And so I was actually flying back to visit my childhood best friend. Like, she'd been like my dear friend since 4th grade, and I like grew up with her family and all that. And growing up, we never really talked to her older brother because he was always like really mean and scary. and just I feel like all you need to know about him is that his parents had a like 6-foot cardboard cutout of him playing football in there, like right when you walked into their home. So really setting him up.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. It all makes sense. Like, none of this was a surprise, really. So I fly back there, and like, we're going to go out, and she was like, oh, we're actually going to go out with my older brother. And I was like, ooh, I thought we didn't like him. She's like, oh, there's been a plot twist. We do now. And so we go over to his place, and breaking news, still don't like him. And he's like doing coke alone in his room. He's being weird. We go out to the bar, and he's like insisting on, I had a boyfriend at the time. He insists on buying all of my drinks, and like, we're just drinking Bud Light. Like, it's not like we were like, getting hammered, but we're drinking Bud Light. And then I distinctly remember on like my second, maybe third Bud Light, I take 2 sips, and then it just goes dark. And then the next memory I have is I'm in like an Uber or something, and I'm asking, like, it's very like blurry, but I'm asking questions, and he keeps like just like laughing it off and like squeezing my knee really hard. And then the next thing I remember is I'm on my back on his bed, and I'm just like screaming no. But I'm still fully dressed, and then it goes dark again. And then next thing I know, I wake up in the morning, and all of my things are wow, I can't speak. All of my things are on his side of his bed, and my phone, my clothes. And then he like comes out and he's like showering, and he like comes out, and he's like, hey, do you want to get in the shower with me? And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? Cause I was just so like in shock. And he was just like, we had sex, Harp. Anyways, yeah, you want to shower off? I'm going to go drop you off to my friends or to your friend. And I was just like, no, I'm good. And then he's in the shower, and I'm just like rocking myself back and forth because I'm like, wait, did I really just sleep with my best friend's older brother? Like, did I just cheat? I guess I'm a cheat. I was like, something's not right. And so I get my phone and my clothes, and I just like throw them on. And I like, as I'm texting, I like had a dress on. And so then when I'm looking down, I notice I have all these bruises all over my legs. And then I notice I have like thumbprint bruises on my arms. And I look in like my phone's reflection, and I see I have a huge black eye. And I'm like, I don't know if that was just someone. Yeah, I was like, it seems like it could beat the fuck out of me. So, okay. But I'm really scared. And I'm asking, like, wait, so why, oh, I said her name. I was like, why isn't your sister here? Where's our other friend? And he was like, oh, like, we just left, Harper. We just like, come on, you remember. Yeah, we just left. Anyway, So we get in the car, and I just remember feeling just that something was off, something was wrong. And I had 11 missed calls from my friend and her friend that we had gone out with as well. His sister.
Good. Yeah.
And I noticed at one point, like someone had answered the phone. So I guess he had talked to his sister from my phone around 2 a.m. And I was like, I hate that. Anyway, so I go, I meet up with my friend. She like pulls me into her room. And she just like inspects my body, and I sit down. Right when I sit down, I like yelped in pain because I was hurt. And she was just like, like, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. And so I tell her, and then I don't blame her. It was, it's hard to listen to it. She was just like, well, none of my other friends have ever had this problem. So what did you do? And I'm like, well,
what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that logic is so bothersome. It was like in the Brett Kavanaugh case when like all these other women came forward and they're like, yeah, but he never raped me. And it's like, just because he didn't rape you doesn't mean he didn't rape anyone. Like, for that logic to make sense, a rapist has to have raped everyone they've ever been around.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, even if I was just like this sexy, confident queen, I was like, it's obviously still, but I was like, especially back then, I was like really awkward, and I was like, please don't touch me. And I was like, that's what I did. So, hard to resist that. But
yeah.
But anyway, so again, I'm very close with her family, and so like I'm covered in bruises, and I'm like, fresh off a rape, so I'm real in pain, and
fresh off a rape.
I'm just trying to put on like a brave face, and so we end up actually going to like an amusement park with her younger brother and her. And the whole day I'm just like, what the fuck? And then I finally work up the courage to tell my mom. I like call my mom, and I still haven't even like admitted to myself that I was assaulted. I still am just like in my head. I'm like, I just don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And then I call my mom and I tell her everything I just told you. And then my mom just starts crying. This is at the end of the day. And she starts crying, and she was like, Harper, have you taken a shower yet? And I was like, no, I haven't. She's like, you need to go to the hospital right now because you were raped. And I was like, and then I just started crying, and I'm like, no. And she was like, yes, Harper, go. And so there's a whole, like, whatever, go to the hospital, get the rape kit done. And there's a male police officer, and he's in there for most of the time, not the whole time, but he's been kind of a hard ass, and then he leaves. And then the woman who's in charge of doing the rape kit just comes up to me, and she has tears in her eyes. And she was like, I just want you to know that I see this all the time. And I just want you to know, so there's no doubt in your mind, you were violently assaulted. And then we both just like cried, and she like, it was like this whole thing. But anyways, then I fly back from North Carolina to LA the next day. And my boyfriend at the time was very supportive, and like him and my family were like comforting me. And the detective calls me the next day and immediately starts victim blaming. Well, what were you drinking? Well, it says here, I have epilepsy too. Well, you have epilepsy, and so why were you drinking on pills? And I was like, because my doctor told me I could.
Wait. So this is the detective, an impartial detective who clearly seems partial.
Yes. Yeah, she was the one assigned to my case. And
it's so weird. I feel like whenever I hear about something like that, it always makes me think that, and, obviously you don't want anybody else to have been raped, of course. But I always feel like people in positions like that either experienced something themselves and are really trying to act like, this doesn't even happen. It's not a real thing. And they're just trying to like, suppress their own emotions, or they were like close to somebody else who was accused of something like this. And like, I feel like it always ties back to themselves. Like it just doesn't make any sense for a person to be like so hostile and accusatory towards somebody that they don't know, like you, who was clearly just went through a bunch of trauma, but who knows?
Yeah, I honestly think you're onto something, because it may like looking, now that it's been years and I can like look back on it. At the time I felt attacked, and I was just like, what? I don't understand. But now I'm like hurt people don't hurt people, and it's like, I think the reason why she was acting like that is because I think she was hurt, and, and I think that, again, like what you just said, I think it's easier to just be like, no, that doesn't happen. Or like, what did you do? Than like, I think.
Yeah, totally.
We're out here raping, so here we go.
And just to clarify for everybody listening, Harper is a very funny stand-up comedian, in case you haven't figured that out. But that's why I have to keep up with all the jokes intertwined with the trauma. It's great. I love it.
Hey, okay.
Absolutely. It's the best way to cope.
Jesus, it was a wild 3-year-long case, or no, maybe it was 2.5 years. The case was open, and just, she never believed me the whole time. I kind of knew from that first phone call, I just knew, I kind of just accepted it. I'm like, I'm going to try and fight. I'm going to do everything I can. But, I can only work as hard as she's willing. And she kind of like, set a wall up. So she would call me up. She did this, I believe 2 times. She called me up and would describe other rape cases she was working on. And she would describe them in very graphic detail and be like, look at how bad that was. Like yours isn't even that bad. And I'm like, I'm sorry that I have like the Ritz-Carlton of rapes, I guess. I don't know. Like,
no,
it was wild.
She definitely has some shit. You can't default to that kind of behavior.
No way. And now, like, all I have to, just for my sanity, so I can like wake up in the morning, I have to laugh at it. But like, it was really, I mean, I like got into, I was like drinking a bunch. I just I
do. I totally do.
I stayed numb for a long, long time, but and like the case, like they were about to bring him in, actually. They were about to arrest him. And the day before, the DA calls me, and it sounded like she had been crying, and she was like, I'm so sorry. And I just already knew what it was. And I just started crying, and I was like, what? And she was just like, your rape kit has, like, the evidence has gone missing from your rape kit, and so we can't charge him now. And I was just like,
how is that even possible? You have a single job to do. And what do you mean it went missing?
Yeah, just a little oopsie on our part. And I was like, and like looking back too, the way that he raped me and beat me, I know that he has done that, but it was very calculated, like doing the coke alone in his room before, like just to like make sure he'd stay up and amp up. And like, and then the woman at the hospital was like, I wish you would have came. She was like, I'm proud of you for coming. I wish you would have come sooner, because I think that you were drugged, but I think your epilepsy medicine kind of like, that's why you have these like little like blotchy memories, because I think your epilepsy medicine kind of saved you in a sense where you can like retain some of these memories. And I was like, okay, well, my bad for not coming soon. I don't know what we're going to do with that, but okay.
Yeah. Wow. And so you said it went on for 3 years, the investigation?
Yes. Yeah. 2.5
So for
years.
3 years, they were able to not lose any of the evidence.
No, kept it sitting right in there. And then the second that it came time, they're like, yeah, oh my God, girl, we don't know this girl. It's an amazing center. It's called the Santa Monica Rape Center. And it's free for like your first 20 visits. It's in obviously Santa Monica, but I was going there, and I remember one day my therapist was like, you know what? Call up the detective, call her up. And I'm like, ooh, not ought to. And she's like, do it. And I was like, and she's like, I'll talk. And then she takes the phone. She's like a badass, has a PhD from Stanford, just like doesn't take any shit. She's like 5'2". And she was like, hey, and then just starts going in on this detective. And she was like, do you understand what you're doing to my client? But then it also was like, okay, so, because, I feel like for those 3 years, I was constantly like, was I raped? Was I not? Because it was just so like emotionally traumatizing. And then it was honestly when they were like, yeah, we're not going to charge him, I was like, I know I was like,
yeah, totally. Do you think it was the DA who lost the evidence?
No, I don't. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Not the DA. I meant the detective, the person who was shitty towards you.
Yes. No, it was, I would bet my life that it was her. 100%. Cause Harper, I went to his house and his parents' house, and they are a lovely family. And I'm like, thanks.
Oh, my best friend. Sure.
They were my second family for years. So yeah, no, they're great. Cool. Peace and blessings. Love you.
It's amazing the rationale that people will come up with to not believe victims in all sorts of cases. I mean, I remember the exact same thing happened with me because after we went to trial for the molestation case, it was like, I mean, there were so many instances where other families were just like, he's just such a nice guy though. Like he's just, how could such a nice guy be capable of doing something like that? Like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, why do you assume that all child molesters are just like, they've got like a stamp on their forehead?
They're charming. It's like,
yeah. I mean, I really do think that it just comes back to people's own experiences and not wanting to deal with their own stuff. But who knows? Man, that is a truly wild story.
It's cute. It's cute.
It's definitely cute. And so what about, there were a couple of things that you said that I wanted to ask about. You said you went to a water park the next day.
No, not an amusement park, it's called Carowinds. It's in South Carolina. Yeah, like right on the cusp of, because I'm from Charlotte, and so it's like right on the cusp. But yeah, no, and then that's another reason why the detective was like, "Oh, so you were riding roller coasters and then cried rape?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Oh my God. Wait, this sounds like an interrogation from this fucking detective.
It was. Oh my God, it was. And then it's still, honestly, and I didn't even honestly realize it until the words just came out of my mouth. I think I still do carry some guilt for like going to that amusement park. I still feel like, oh, I shouldn't have gone. But I'm like, it was my friend. It was my best friend from childhood. And then her little brother, and then it's like their older brother, the one that did that. So it's like, I just didn't know what to do.
If it makes you feel any better, I went to a number of amusement parks with my friend and his dad while he was molesting me over a 2-year time span. So I'm fucking right there with you.
That's how we cope. We're like,
I know it is. It feels good to discuss trauma regardless of what it is. Like when you feel somebody else being vulnerable, it makes you feel like you can share your own stuff, like without any sort of judgment. And it just, I don't know, it feels good despite it being, super tragic. Yeah. But I felt the exact same blame and guilt for not coming forward sooner. I mean, I let it go on for 2 years. A lot of people never say anything about it, with molestation in particular and rape, of course. But like, I felt like the longer it went on, the harder it became to speak up, because I knew that everybody would be like, oh, you let it go on for 2 years. Like, what the fuck? Like, there were people in the TikTok comments who were like, yeah, I bet you liked it after 2 years. Oh
my God. The TikTok comments I have never seen. Some of these people are like, I hope he rapes you again. And I'm like, no. What's your address? I'm going to give it to him. And I'm like, get away from me.
Oh my God. Are you people? What the fuck?
Yes.
Holy, I mean, it's not surprising, I guess. It's, people when they're anonymous will say just about anything.
Yeah. And if there's like someone with like a blank account, I'm sorry they said that to you, but yeah, it's like.
Oh, no. I mean, it's honestly kind of, I think it's hilarious. I want to get to the TikToks in a second here, but before we do that, after you found out that they lost the evidence, what happened after that?
So I was dating a guy through that whole time, and my assault put a lot on that relationship. It put a lot, like it was a lot of stress. I had changed. I wasn't my fun, bubbly self. I was angry all the time. And I feel like when that case was, closed or just thrown out, I think I kind of just shut down. I just was like, cause I'd been like pent up for so long. And then finally when it happened, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, that's it. I kind of just like settled into it, like into the defeat. And, I ended up, that relationship, I think was just kind of hanging on, by like a thread. And then the second that, wasn't a thing anymore, I think we kind of like gave each other permission to kind of like let it go. Yeah. And then it was like shortly after that, I think I spent like 3 months just blacked out, honestly, just blackout drunk. And then finally pulled myself out of that. And then I got into some therapy, but I was like the queen of like, I would start therapy. And then the second that they would start touching on something real, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't come to next session or the one after that. And then I would just block I would just block. And then I'd be like, okay. And then, yeah, it was really wild, but I just like honestly threw myself into stand-up. And then, I honestly think that until this past summer, that's when I started stand-up again. That's when I started therapy again. That's like, I like just now, honestly, probably finally healed like a huge part of that, I guess. That was like the part of me that was like, still sad about it for some reason,
That's
like,
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start doing stand-up?
I started doing stand-up maybe 2 months before I was assaulted. But then when I was assaulted, I stopped. So when I was like 23, but then I stopped for essentially like about a year. I did it a little bit, but it was like half-assed. And then when I was 24, I started doing it like more. And then I honestly went really hard at it when I'm 27 now. So when I was like 25, 26, that's when I really started going hard.
Nice. And when did you first start joking about it?
2019 is when I first started. I tried it a little bit in 2018, but it was like, just wasn't funny. One time I started talking about it and then I started crying on stage. I was like, and so then, and they were like, oh, and I was like, it it was a little too much.
I feel that. One time I was like 4 months into stand up. I was doing it in New York, and I got on stage and I was like, yeah, when I was 8, I got molested by my best friend's dad for 2 years. And somebody in the audience went, gross. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. It was actually really funny. And they were obviously right. But at that point in stand up, I had no idea how to handle it. And I was like, fuck. Just kind of like turtled up, and just didn't really know what to say. But it is interesting, like trying to figure out the right way to present this information without, and I think a big part of it is like people will be as comfortable as you are. And if you're not, I feel like it's so easy to tell when somebody's talking about trauma. I mean, especially on stage, like you can tell if they're cool with it or not. And I think for maybe the first 4 or 5 months, because the first set I actually ever did was molestation.
Wow.
Pretty bananas, because it was the feeling of doing stand up for the first time, which is already a nuts feeling, combined with telling a bunch of strangers that I got molested. And I hadn't talked about it basically since I went to trial, which was when I was 10. So it was like, I remember finishing that set and I was just like running through the streets of New York, just like, fuck yeah. Like, this is just like the most amazing cathartic feeling. But
it's so freeing when you can, cause like stand up is already the scariest fucking thing. And then like, cause even if you're just like joking about like banana or, whatever, but it's so fucking horrifying just like getting up there and like, especially if a joke doesn't work. And then when you're doing it about your fucking assault, like, I don't know if people realize how intense that actually is. It's so hard. But when you make it good, oh my God, no, like that's the best feeling. And it does feel like you're taking the power back.
Oh, completely. And it feels just as bad when it doesn't go like if you like bombing sucks, but like telling a bunch of people that you got molested and having them not laugh, it's like definitely worse than getting molested.
Exactly.
But, I know exactly what you mean though. And it's like, it feels so empowering, and like, it felt like therapy in many ways, like going up and just trying to figure out how you really feel about what happened to you on stage.
Yeah.
But it really is just like talking. I mean, it doesn't really matter the format that you do it in. It's like, just have these conversations openly with somebody that you trust or strangers, it really doesn't matter, but it's just getting it off your chest. And I think that that's the feeling that comes from doing stand up about it. It's just like releasing it into an audience and being like, this is your problem now.
It is. It's like, and it's off of me. Yeah. And it's also great because there's this one specific joke I tell about it. And every time I do, there's always a few women that laugh really hard at it. And like part of me, like my heart kind of breaks for them because I'm like, fuck, I know you're laughing that hard because you were hurt too. But then the other part of me just feels like, fuck yes. Like, it's like, I like that. Like, we're not alone. And like in like this for like the few minutes that I'm on stage and like that I'm telling these fucked up jokes, like you can like laugh and feel like you're not alone too. And it's like, I mean, I'm doing stand up to be funny first, but it's like, if we can have like a cute, a nice little like unity vibe, I'm down for that too.
Totally. And it's like, because most people never have any sort of interaction around the topic of rape that isn't super sad and like depressing and makes you feel bad. I mean, in molestation too, even though we might not even be aware of it, like people are wanting a different way to process these experiences. And I think that that's what you've obviously provided to people. Cause I saw the bit where you can hear that one lady like really laughing super hard. And you're like, I'll see you after the show. Like, we got to talk about this and figure this out. But it's true. I mean, it's like, nobody expects to laugh about these things. I know for me, like I was so afraid to talk about it. I didn't think that there was any way to bring it up in a way that wouldn't make myself and the people around me feel super uncomfortable. And I hated that. I think that's part of why it's so hard to speak up, is because you don't want anybody else to feel shitty. I mean, you don't want to make people feel bad for something that you went through, and yet that's the default reaction. And this is one of the things that I wanted to ask you with the TikTok was like, what were some of the reactions that you had? I mean, I can imagine that a bunch of people were reaching out to you. What happened with all of that? So
first of all, before I posted that video, I had 40 followers and I was just bombing into the abyss to no one. I literally was asking my 13-year-old or 12-year-old cousin on there. I'm like, how do I do this? And she's like, oh my God, you're embarrassing. I was like, I know. And so like, whatever. And then I was just like, well, Laugh Factory said that they don't want to put, or like more or less said that they don't want to post that bit. So I'm like, fuck them. I'm just going to post it. It's going to get 3 views.
They didn't want to post it?
They politely declined. They're like, oh yeah, maybe. Yeah. And I was like, I know, like, I know. You know when you just know?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I was just like, whatever. And then anyway, so I was just like, fine, I'll just post it. And then within probably like an hour, all of a sudden I'm getting a ton of texts from like my friends they're like, Harper, what the fuck? And I'm like, what do you mean, what the fuck? And then I pull it up and I'm like, wait, I didn't expect it. It was kind of like stressed me out. I'm like, I didn't know it was going to be, I think it was on election night. And then my roommate and I are watching, the election, and then we're like hitting refresh. And at first it was like 20,000 and then 100,000 and then 500,000, like just, refreshing. And it just stressed me out. So I was like through my phone and I'm like, oh my God. And then the next day, like some people, like almost everyone from my high school that I was friends with reached out to me. And then we're just like, hey, just wanted to say hi. And I'm like, oh, okay, I bet you did. And then, because a lot of them obviously like knew who it's about. And then I had like a few comedy bookers be like, hey, when stand-up's back, like I got you. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, it was mostly just like people from the past, like reaching out, which was nice.
That's awesome. Did you have anybody reaching out saying that they had been through something similar?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Which was like, that was breaking my spirit, but it was also just, it's like, I hate to say that it's nice in a way, but like, it is like, just to also hear other people's stories. And so many, like there were like young girls, like 17, 18-year-old girls just started DMing me like, oh my God, me too. Or like, what the fuck? Like, da, 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 da. Like I see still in my friend group, and I'm like, get them the fuck out. But yeah, it was so wild. And I was just like reading through all these like, and again, I had to like throw my phone away because I'm just like, oh my God, it's like sensory overload. But it was, it was really powerful.
That's so cool. And the same thing happened to me. I mean, it was actually like, I could not believe how many people, well, I mean, statistically, it like totally makes sense, because it happens. So rape and molestation are so common, but I think it's when people see this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, but when people see you being as vulnerable as you were in a way that shows that you're also like coping and like have done a lot of healing, I think people just gravitate towards it. And I'm so glad that people were doing the same to you. And it's like, I don't know, it's stand up, huh? It's fucking it's so powerful.
I never thought that I would be a comedian who talked about this type of stuff. Like in my everyday life, even like when I was a child, like I've always had like kind of a dark sense of humor, but like it's more just to like make my friends go, oh, and I'm like, ha ha ha. But like when I was on stage, I never really liked that. So like in a sense, after getting raped, it did help me kind of like be more honest with myself too. Cause also it's like rape is like one of the worst things that can happen to you. So it's like when that happens, you're kind of like, and you want me to be scared of this? No, like I've already gone through the worst thing, like bring it on.
Yeah, totally. And then especially when you like, I think that once you say it on stage, like the idea, obviously bombing always sucks, but like it just, I don't know. It's very freeing. And it's kind of like, there's nothing that I can say on stage now that I'm going to be embarrassed about. Already, the most embarrassing thing about me is already out there. And like, so it is very freeing. Of course, not everybody is going to be in a position where they're willing to like joke about it and process things joking about it.
So that's also, so when you're like, all right, how's your rape-a-roo? And then they're like, I'm still coping. And you're like, yeah, all right.
That was exactly what it was. It became like,
when someone hasn't gone to therapy too, like my therapist and I were making jokes. Like I would be like weeping, but I mean, also I'm, broken in the sense that I do stand up. So it's like that happened before. Like we're sitting there and like, I'd be like weeping, but then we're like cracking jokes and we're like, okay, anyways, like, let's try and heal. Da, 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 da. But then it would just like, I remember I was talking to this one girl. It was after a show, and like she came up to me. She was like, "Oh, that set, it helped me with this, and I can't believe you went through that. This is my story." And then this was but like I cracked a joke, and she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "What?" And we were just like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yeah, all right, room there." Okay, I was like, "I'm so sorry."
But that's the thing, is it like, it feels like it's never appropriate to bring up that you went through something like that in any sort of format other than stand up. Like in like normal, like people will ask me, like, well, obviously it's not the only thing I do stand up about. It's just the thing that I happen to be pursuing the most. It seems to be the most impactful than dick jokes, or whatever. So, but then like I'll be at like a party or something and be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I do stand up." And they're like, "Oh, what about?" And I'm like,
oh my God.
Here we go.
Yes. Yes. Okay. This is like months ago, but I went on a date with someone, And again, and then he was like, oh, you just stand up, like, cool. Like, what's it about? And I was like, oh, just it's kind of like storytelling, just kind of like that. And he was like, okay. And then he had looked up, I don't even know where he would have found it, but he like he found one of my rape bits. He's like, oh, wow. Oh. And I was like, yeah, dude. Yeah. What?
Wow. What, dude?
Like, honey, if you can't take a joke, then keep it moving. But it was also just so uncomfortable. And I was like, oh God. I was like, well, I can't take it back now. Like it's already out there. And like, obviously I love to joke about it, but it was also just like funny to see how other people react. Cause some people are like, it's either like, oh, badass, or oh, I feel guilty for laughing, but cool, good for you. Or like, why the fuck would you laugh at that? And I'm like, yeah, so do I myself. So there we go.
The guilty for laughing is a classic. There were hundreds of those comments on the TikTok that I posted. And it's like, why do you think I'm doing this?
Yeah.
It was right. So clearly the point of it. Yeah. But I mean, everybody processes these things differently. And I think that it's like, there's no right way to handle trauma, but it's cool to have found this way that is not only like very empowering, but also is like, it feels so good to laugh about it. Like, and there's this quote from Wayne Dyer. He says, it's impossible to laugh and be afraid at the same time. And I was like, that's exactly how it feels. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
I wanted to ask you about another one of the bits that you did where you were talking about how sometimes you have to present this information to your guy friends in a less graphic way. And I wanted to ask you just more about that. Why do you think that is?
So the reason why that is because when I tell my female friends, all of them are like, Jesus Christ, Harper, like, okay, like, how can I help you? What do I do? Whatever. But they're like, all right. My guy friends, without fail, start crying. What? No. And then they start screaming, oh, I'm going to kill him. I can't believe that. And I'm like, what the fuck? Calm the fuck down. And like, I have many different types of friends. We have like the sensitive guys, we got the jocks, we got an array of friends. And I'm not kidding. Every single one of them. And even like when I told my mom's like, all right, so here's what we're going to fucking do. And I'm like, okay. And then my dad was strong. And like, my dad's actually the reason why I got into therapy, because I was like really resisting it at the time too. Why? We don't know. But my dad is the one that like stepped up and like really like made me go to therapy. And also like, we don't have a serious relationship. It's more of just like, we're always jokey. And so the fact that he was able to like drop in, I was like, oh, okay. I see you, Dad. Okay. But like, even he like was like weeping and like, I don't know, it's just so interesting. And like, I'm not shitting on that. Like, I know they're doing it because they care for me and it's very beautiful and sweet. So I don't mean to belittle their feelings, but I just thought it was just so funny because I also kind of learned too, like if I was like, oh yeah, I was violently raped by my best friend's older brother. And then they're going to be like, oh, and they want to like throw up. But then if I'm just like, so I was hurt. And then they're like, okay. And I'm like, and it was bad. All right, more. And then if I break it off, it's like feeding a duck, if like you're breaking off a little bread, it's like, they're going to get full, but you got to break it. You can't just give them the whole meal right at once.
Right. That totally makes sense. Yeah. And I part of why I wanted to ask that is because one of the things that was really interesting about the TikTok bit that I put out was like so many guys were reaching out saying that they'd been molested and that they've never told anybody, and same with girls as well. But I think that for guys, there's this additional sort of like masculinity aspect that people feel the need to like uphold, and they just associate, obviously getting molested, it's not a macho thing to admit that happened to you. And so I was wondering if that was part of why these guys maybe didn't even want to think about that in that context or something. I don't know. I was just curious, but
it's really interesting. And what I've noticed, like when I was watching your bit, I obviously, you already know, I was looking through those comments, and and then this was my own stigma I had, because I'm like, wow, so many guys have been molested. And then I'm like, yeah, Harper, of course. Like, I was like, what? Like, but it's just so interesting because like, I feel, I mean, at least for like how I used to think, it's like when you picture rape, you just think like, oh, the man's doing it to the woman, but like, you don't realize it's like women and women can do it to each other, men and men, like, like, or like a woman to a man, like you don't like it goes, everyone can be raped. So here
cheers
we go.
to that. Totally. And I feel like it's that's part of why it's so good to talk about this stuff, is like just seeing, like, for example, if you've never talked to anybody about what you've been through and you see somebody else talking about it, just knowing that another person can empathize with you, or you can empathize with them, makes it so much more manageable. Because I feel like with these topics, I mean, they're the most taboo topics that you can bring up. Straight up, rape and molestation are probably the two. They're just right up there, you know? And I think just knowing that you're not alone. I know that when I was going through it, I was like, not only does this suck, but nobody else knows what this is like. And I feel like it just compounds the trauma and makes it so much harder to deal with. And so I think that that's part of why people were reaching out to us so much, is they're just like, yo, like, fucking thanks for talking about this and showing that this is, not only am I not alone, but there are thousands of people that have been through the exact same thing.
I know, it's so disheartening, but it also is, it's beautiful in a dark way that, like, everyone from just like posting a joke, like everyone feels safe enough to come into your comments or like come into your Instagram DMs or wherever it is, and like, you know, and tell their story, or like be like, oh my God, yeah, same, me too. So it's just like, we're all just like this, it's a cancer. It's like molestation is something that, like, I feel like people just get away with so fucking much, and it's so heartbreaking, but it's beautiful that we can like kind of find strength in numbers, that like it's all to us.
Yeah, it's a silent massive group of people that have been through it all. And then you mentioned, you were talking about how the Laugh Factory was like politely declined to post your bit. So I wanted to ask you about that, because YouTube doesn't monetize any of the videos that I put up that like this podcast at all. And they say that it's because it's like the content is like not advertiser appropriate or whatever, which on one hand I completely understand. I get that nobody, like, it's hard to be like, I got raped and now here's a word from our sponsor, you know, like it's complicated. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like that is also contributing to the problem, like making people think that this is not something that you can talk about regularly.
You're saying that it's bad, and it's not. My therapist that I saw at the Santa Monica Center was incredible. Should have kept going to her, but she once said, because I was like, I just feel so embarrassed, I feel so ashamed, and then she was like, if someone came and robbed your car, would you feel embarrassed of that? And I was like, fuck no. And she was like, you shouldn't feel embarrassed about this. This is just a bad thing that happened to you. It's like demoralizing and it's dehumanizing, yes, and it's one of the most vulnerable crimes that can be committed against a person. She was like, but it's not your fault. Like, if someone was to break into your home, you're not going to be embarrassed of that. You're going to be like, fuck you for breaking into my home. So that's exactly how you should feel about, like, someone broke into your home. And I was like, someone did break into my home.
That is exactly what it is, though. That's so great. I love that.
It was a tender way to explain it, but like that helped me move through it so much. And then when like people, I remember at one time I was working out some jokes at an open mic, and this girl gets up and like, she's really funny. And I know she wasn't trying to be a bitch, but she gets up and was just like, oh, great. All right. You know, here, I think I was like up next, and she was like, okay, great. Here comes Harper. And Harper, please don't do the rape stuff. Please don't. Like, we don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to hear it. And then I get up, and then I was like, all right, you didn't ask for this, but neither did I. And then I just like get into
it. Good save. That's pretty much the worst thing that somebody could say before you go.
Yeah. I was like, honey, I'm doing these jokes for a good show. I need to get them out. So sorry. But yeah, it was just really, I don't know. Like, yeah, there is still like such a stigma. It's like, I think in our lifetime, because my mom was telling me, she's like, Harper, when I was growing up, you never talked about, like, no one talked about this. And then the Me Too movement happened, and like, there's still so much more work to do, but like there's so much work that has been accomplished in talking about this. But it's also, you know, as we can see, like with YouTube and then with like certain places not wanting to share it, like, you know, there's still a lot of work to, like, people just get so uncomfortable, like, oh, we don't want to talk about it. But I'm like, look at our, I mean, you know, sorry to say this, but like, look at our TikToks, look at how popular that is. It's like, clearly it needs to be talked about.
Yeah. And if you were to show that TikTok, your TikTok or my TikTok to, say, 10 million people or 100 million people, the same percentage of people would have a visceral reaction to it.
Yes.
And that's what's so wild, is that like, I don't feel any sort of obligation in terms of like, you know, I need to get more views, but I do feel an obligation in terms of like, this stuff can really help people. And it's like, it needs to get out. The fact that millions of people have seen our TikToks, and it's like, it's not surprising that there was this big of a reaction to it. I don't know how many billion people are in the world, but like whatever percentage of those people who have been raped and molested, they would all benefit from laughing about it. I mean, again, not necessarily everybody, but I think the vast majority of people who have been through something. It's funny that people who haven't been through something like this get more uncomfortable laughing about it than people who have.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's like, we took a rape, you can take a joke.
Exactly. I wonder if, for example, the Laugh Factory posted that. I have no doubt that the reaction would be super positive. We know that it would work. We've seen it work on TikTok. And TikTok is also generally like a younger audience too. And like, not that our material is for a specific age group, but I think that older people, not like older people, but like our age, like 20s, 30s, people who are maybe not on TikTok as much, everybody can benefit from this. There is no age discrimination. There's no gender discrimination, class, race, anything. Like it affects everybody. These are both such massive problems that I like to think we're doing a good job of fighting.
Yes, so I like to too.
It's pretty exciting. Another thing I wanted to ask you was, I noticed that you were putting trigger warnings on your videos, and I wanted to ask you, because people have gotten mad at me in my comments for not putting trigger warnings on mine. And before I say why I haven't been doing it, I wanted to ask you, do you, as a rape victim, do you think like if you were to see content, and maybe it's different because you're a stand-up and you joke about this stuff, but do you think it is a lot more helpful to have that trigger warning when you see content that might be similar?
For me personally, no. I think I'm also so desensitized because I'm just like, also, I mean, everyone's had a hard life, whatever, but I think I just became desensitized towards stuff at an early age. Like my aunt like took her own life, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, just so I'm just like, all right, the world's dark. And that was 4th grade. Here we go. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah.
And literally, like, because my first bit that I put, I didn't even know I was supposed to. I just put it up there.
I didn't either.
A lot of people were like, "Hey," and I was like, oh, "Okay." And I don't mean to mock them, but hey, if it triggers you, my bad. Like, I'm not trying to do that. But so then I was just like, if that like does make people, if they do need a warning, then okay, great. Like, I have no qualms about like putting it like a little second, like trigger warning, boom. Like, fine.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I totally understand why people were mad at me for it, for not doing it. But I also think that it's like, if you put a trigger warning, right, and somebody's watching who's been through some shit, if you put a trigger warning, they're going to think about the thing that they don't want to think about first.
That honestly seems more I completely agree. Like, right? I only was doing it because I felt like, again, I'm very new to TikTok. I don't know. Like, oh, no.
Not criticizing you at all. I'm just saying from my,
But I completely agree with why, with what you just said. Yeah. Because like, and honestly, I've seen videos that go like trigger warning. And honestly, sometimes when they say that, then I'll just scroll because like, because it is like a little, and I was like, oh, and it's because I think of my thing and like, maybe I don't want to.
Yeah, it's like they might be talking about like, I don't know, an eating disorder. And then my mind's like, fuck, I got molested. Shit. Like, you know, it's like unrelated, right? Yeah. And the other thing is it's like, I feel like adding a trigger warning almost makes it like watch out. The point is to try to normalize these conversations and to get people to laugh about it. And I feel like with the trigger warning, you're being like, you know, I don't know, watch out. Like, this is going to fuck you up. Like, rather than it just being like, hey, I'm not talking about anybody else that went through shit. This is literally just what happened to me. I don't know how else why should I have to warn you about what I'm about to talk about that has to do with me? And again, I get it. It's totally understandable why people think that. But I just wonder if sometimes maybe it's doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was thinking about that too. And like, I had like pulled up my page the other day because I was like checking, you know, whatever. And even just like when I like scrolled and I see trigger warning, even like I don't even think I really like articulated why, but I was just kind of like, no, I just don't really like it. But I didn't really think too much on it and just kept going. But like with you saying that, I completely agree. And also, what if the trigger warning is like, I eat a lot, and you're like, I was thinking about the time I got punched in the face and then raped. So all right, here we go. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, exactly. It seems so, I don't know. Most of it is just like trigger warning, please. You know, it's not like you're a piece of shit for not having a trigger warning. It's generally like people are not super aggressive about it, but
I did get one. If you don't put a trigger warning on the next one, I will find your rapist and I will make him do it again. And I was like,
what? Are you serious?
Run up, honey. Okay. Yeah.
So, imagine being a person who wrote that. That's holy shit.
They're probably like 12 years old. I'm like, fuck you. But it was just I was like, Jesus Christ.
That is fucking next level. I don't even know. Wow. Do you spend time on TikTok? Like, are you a scroller?
A little bit. I feel like more so now than before. Like before, no. It just stresses, really stresses me out. And like my roommate and I were talking, 'cause she's a comic too. And we were like,
who's your roommate?
Gabby Lamb.
Oh, it sounds super familiar. I'm not sure if I know her though. Yeah.
But we were on it and she was like, Harper, being on TikTok as like a stand-up comic is kind of like when you go to a foreign country and you don't speak the language, and like it seems really cool and exciting and you're happy to be there, but it's just really fucking stressful and you can't do anything because you don't know the culture and you don't know the language. And I'm like, that is so well put. But yeah, very honestly, well put. I'd be on there. I'm like, oh, I don't understand these dances and I don't get it.
Totally. And are you familiar with like all of the super sexual dances that are on there? Like,
that's also why I was not going on there, because I'm like, why are you like, it was stressing me out. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what is happening?
Well, and it's weird because like I made a YouTube video about this, and basically, so there was a trend that was happening back in the day, maybe like a month ago. That's what TikTok time feels like. But it was the trend where basically girls would just like put their face down. It would start with their face and then they put their face down and it would just be their ass up in the air.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Rolling Stone wrote an article about how TikTok teenagers, like not 18, way younger, people are taking those videos and putting them on Pornhub. And they're making like compilations of these underage girls doing this. And so I started like, you know how you can click on a sound, like, and then you can see all the videos that were made from that sound.
Yeah.
If you click on that sound, it's quite literally thousands of underage girls doing this trend, right? And the exposure that TikTok was giving them was bananas. It would be like I found this one girl who was 15 and she was averaging like maybe 100,000, 200,000 views a video. And then she did that trend and got 48 million views. And if you think about like what is actually going on here, like it's mass distribution, and that's one trend. Like all of the trends, like fucking WAP, you know, like every trend is just like super sexual, and these children, that's what they are, they're children, are dancing with next to no clothing. I mean, they're basically in swimsuits, which is effectively lingerie. It's as minimal clothing as you could possibly wear, and they're dancing they're doing their own personal webcam shows for millions of people.
Yeah, no, I see that, and I'm like, I think I read somewhere that like Jack White, his kids didn't even know, or maybe they still don't know that he's famous, and he like raised them out in the woods. And I'm like, if I ever became successful like that, that's what I would do. My kids aren't having phones. They're not having any of that. I'm like, we're going to be living in the damn woods and you will not even know what a TV is. Like, that's not what's
that sounds ideal.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy to me because like, I feel so conflicted with TikTok because like, in addition to having this like amazing outlet, like because of TikTok, we were both able to reach millions of people. But at the same time, I'm like, this is a fucking Black Mirror episode. Right now, the children of our species.
Oh my God, it is like a Black Mirror fucking episode. It is. It's so creepy. It's so fucking creepy.
And TikTok is profiting off of these children doing this because they don't pay you until you're 18. So they're making billions of views worth of ad revenue off of these children twerking for their cameras. And there's no age restriction, right? Like anybody can make a TikTok account and interact anonymously, which we both have experience with in our comments. But like you fucking adults can just comment on these 13-year-old girls, you know, doing the WAP. And it's like they're facilitating these interactions with these kids. And I don't know. I feel very conflicted about TikTok because on one hand, it's obviously brilliant in the ways that we've talked about. But at the same time, it's like, what the fuck is going on? There's never been an app like this. And I can't even believe that they're not in trouble for it.
No, it's really insane. And that's another thing. That's like what Gabby and I were talking about. Like TikTok is just so scary because like, obviously, I uploaded my video to get views. Okay. But like for how quickly it was amassing that number of views, it kind of scared me. It made me uncomfortable. I'm like, geez, like it was a lot. It's
Yeah.
a lot. And for how quickly it can just, like, people can just take off. It's insane. I don't feel like we've ever had a platform like this before.
Yeah, totally. And it also, like, I mean, it hooks you. Like, the feeling of going viral is very intoxicating. I don't know. Part of me wants to like double down and just be like, fuck it. Like, let's just run TikTok. Like, it'll probably work out. I mean, it's definitely worth putting the time into trying to make it on there, whatever make it means. Right.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I'm like, am I like condoning this behavior that's going on here? That's
kind of how I was feeling too. So funny enough, one of my buddies, we used to do the Laugh Factory open mic together like 4 or 5 years ago, like back in the day. And he's like a young guy, and like he would do it, and he would get up like with his ukulele, and like, you know, he like had like fun songs, and then he kind of like dropped off the scene, never saw him again. Then like I was scrolling on TikTok, like over the, you know, obviously in quarantine, like, and I would always hear this song like called like Stuck in the Middle. I'm like, oh wow, I'm like that voice sounds so familiar.
Ty Verdes.
Yeah, and his real name's Tyler. And so like, I would hear his voice. I'm like, oh okay. And then all of a sudden one day I like clicked on it, and then he popped, and I'm like, wait, Tyler, what the fuck? And and like in 6 months he's gone super viral, like signed to like he's like taking off, and it's because of TikTok. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I was like talking to him about it, and he was like, Harper, stop being afraid of it. You got to get on the wave. You got to get on it while you can. And I'm just like, but are you not scared of it? It's so weird. And he's like, no, you got to keep your eyes on it, and you got to just, he's like, there has never been he was like pitching it in a positive way. Like, there's never been a platform like this. I'm like, maybe that's a scary thing. But he was just like, yeah. He's like, especially for musicians, it's like the best way. It's like where musicians are taking off now. And he was like, and then with your jokes, he was like, Harper, your joke just popped up on my For You page, and then blah, blah, blah. And like, he's like, it's so good to like keep going. And like, you got to keep posting. Like, he like gave me like a TikTok lesson. I was like, oh, it's just so stressful. But so it's like, on one hand, it's good for, you know, for people like Tyler, and then people like us. But then it's also like, then you have these like little teens that, you know, that like teenagers are so impressionable. And like, I remember being like a flat-chested little like 12-year-old girl, and then like I would see like girls like in movies and stuff with like big ass tits, so I would like stuff my goddamn boobs, and I would just be like, oh okay. And it's like, that was toxic enough that I thank God TikTok wasn't there, so I didn't have to put that on. I mean, you know what I mean? But it's
totally like, oh my God, imagine growing up with TikTok. Fuck.
No, and it's so stressful too. And like, you know, everyone like TikTok, like all the famous like teens, I feel like, you know, have all this money, and then like all the girls expect to look like that. And I'm like, no, you're growing into your body, baby girl. Like let, you know, you're going to have some weird ass teeth. You're going to have acne. Like, that's okay. Like, I feel like it's robbing children of their innocence, honestly.
Totally. I don't know. The most popular creator on the app is a 16-year-old in a bathing suit. Like, what the fuck is going on? She's got 90 million followers. I guarantee you the majority of them are probably over 18-year-old dudes. You know, like, this is not normal. And I feel like people are willing to put up with, or willing to turn a blind eye to this like clear problem just because it is such an awesome app. Like, I mean, it's my favorite app, but by far, I mean, in terms of my enjoyment of the content that I see on there, and it's like, it's just quick hits of dopamine. I mean, it's just, that's all it is. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I don't know what to do, especially because it's like, this whole podcast is trying to, you know, have an impact on this kind of stuff. And I can only imagine like how many kids are currently being affected negatively as a result of TikTok. So who knows?
I know, right?
To do is, but that's wild about Tyler too, because I love that guy's. I mean, I think he just released another song called Slugs, which is so good. I think
he has some new ones coming that are so fucking good. Yeah, it's like, it's just amazing. I'm like, I never knew you could do this in music. He's like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, like, it's like so great. He got to quit his job. Like, no, his life is changed for the better. Like it's like, and like, it's because of TikTok, like just uploading videos, just whatever. He was like, yeah, I just, quarantine hit, was, doing my thing, didn't really know what to do, and just started uploading songs, and then and I'm like, oh my God, like he works really hard at it, but like it's like he's a perfect example of like the benefits that can come from like using the app to your advantage. Yeah,
and I feel like I would also end up regretting it a lot if I was just like, no, I'm done with TikTok. I'm not going to do it anymore because of my moral standards or whatever the fuck. Like at the end of the day, like whether or not I you know, it's not going to have an impact if I'm posting or not posting in terms of the massive problem that TikTok has right now. Yeah. I had another account that was sort of like a Finsta for TikTok, and it was just like sex jokes, basically. It was just like random, just ridiculous shit, because I also didn't know what I was doing at all with TikTok. I mean, there's no manual, but my videos would get taken down like pretty regularly, just with content that was like, I mean, a lot of it was warranted. There were definitely videos that were pushing the boundaries, but for most of it, I was like, how can you allow children to twerk on your homepage and take down my dick joke? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you, because I wasn't posting sex jokes, but like I do art as well. And so I posted this piece that I did, and I actually I drew, it's kind of like, it was inspired from my sexual assault. It's like kind of like how like a woman's body feels like after being like assaulted, but basically it's just like a woman on her back with her legs open, and then the vagina is like a crying monster, and like it doesn't look like an actual vagina. It looks like a little monster, but it just happens to be in between the legs. And then it's like done in like a pop art style, and whatever, I liked it. But anyway, so like I would do little videos of me do whatever of making it, and I put it up. Within a few minutes it starts taking off, and then all of a sudden, speaking of taking off, the video gets taken, and it's like, no, it violates the guidelines. And I'm like, oh, fuck off, because I literally see girls like, not only just like the little girls twerking, but it's like, there's like this one girl that will like do like vagina talks, and she'll like move her like she'll like put her hand in a pair of jeans and like use it as like a puppet and like and I'm like that's raunchy and gnarly.
Yeah.
And but like mine's just a drawing and it's a cartoon. Oh my God. Like,
yeah. What? It's so random and arbitrary, and they don't give you any explanations for like why it happened.
They're like, yep. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird. And what's even more wild now is that like TikTok's not a Chinese like enigma anymore, you know, like it's owned by Walmart and Oracle. Like these are US based companies now that are responsible for inundating our species with softcore child porn. I mean, that's what it is.
It is softcore, yeah.
It really does feel so Black Mirror-y. Don't know what to do about it, but
yeah,
you know, here we are. Anyway, just a quick little TikTok tangent there. But you talked about therapy and how it seemed to help a lot. And it's really cool to see somebody like yourself who's been through what you went through and is able to now be speaking openly and laughing about it. And like, it's like obviously inspiring for so many people to see. And I wanted to ask you, like, if you could give a piece of advice to somebody who has been through something similar, or maybe will go through something similar, what would you say to somebody like that?
Even though nothing came from me, like going to the police, I would still say always just like, if you can, try to do that. And then get in therapy as quickly as possible, just as quickly as you can, because your brain is so fragile. And like what I've learned, I'm in group therapy as well. And like what I've learned through that, like your brain develops toxic coping mechanisms really quickly. And then like they can, and like, because it's so impressionable, you will have to like, it's going to take a lot of work to undo how you deal with trauma. So getting in therapy as quickly as possible, just confronting it, like not confront, like, you know, confiding in a friend, I think. And if you can, don't turn to substances. I would feel like just try and throw yourself in something else, like more like healthy, like maybe a craft, maybe start taking a cooking class. I don't know. But, and also like give yourself permission to cry. Like, I don't care if it's been 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, like if you are still upset about, like, I used to judge myself. I'm like, why am I still upset? Even now, occasionally I'll just cry and I'm like, yeah, bitch, a bitch got hurt. Next. Like, yep. Like sad. Like I'm sad sometimes. I don't care. And it's like, I think there's a power in in letting yourself feel the sadness, but just, I think you just need to like, you know, don't feel shame, feel sadness. Like, you know, and then that can give you strength.
I love that. I totally agree with everything you said. And I think that there's, especially when people see people like ourselves, like laughing and joking about it, I think people oftentimes associate, like, they're like, oh, well, you must never cry about it. It's like, no, like I bawled my fucking face off for many years about this. And that's like, it's all part of the process. Like it's an ongoing journey. Like you don't, it's hard to find a definitive point where you're like, I'm better now, you know, like it's a constant
I don't
thing.
think you're ever going to be like, oh, you're going to be like, I fixed it, guys. It's like, no, like, you know, it's really ongoing. And like, I don't know about you, but like for me, sometimes like I can be with someone I trust the most and like we'll be having a great time in bed. And then all of a sudden, like a light, it just switches. And all of a sudden I feel like I feel like it's like, cause like our memories and stuff are stored in our muscles. And all of a sudden it's just like, I just get triggered and I'm like, whoa, get off, get off, get off. And I have to just like take a second to like, whatever. It doesn't happen that much, but every once in a while, it'll just like be like a fun little surprise. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like, again, then I was like really afraid till I was like, oh, then I just can't be touched ever again. And It's like, no, honey, that's just like sometimes a fun little quirk that you have. And you know what? You just take a few minutes and then you're all good. So here we go.
Yeah. I feel like just allowing yourself to feel however you feel, whatever that is, if laughing, crying, whatever. I mean, because like in a situation like that, where your body is physically responding and remembering things that you've been through, I feel like the worst thing you can do is try to play it off like it's not happening. I mean, like this is our body's natural response to things, and like just acknowledging it and not feeling like you can't feel it. Like the best thing you can do is feel whatever that means to you, but just allowing yourself to exist, like naturally process these things, whatever you've gone through. I mean, our bodies are amazing in that way, but I really appreciate you sharing it. And yeah, I mean, this has been such an awesome conversation, Harper, and I really just applaud you for everything that you've done, and it's so cool to see. And I'm really happy that you felt like you could come on here. And
thank you so much for asking. I've never done anything like this. I was like kind of nervous, but this was really fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and what's your Instagram or any TikTok handles, anything like that? Oh
yeah, it's just Harper-Rose D on all platforms.
Okay. Harper-Rose D. Yo, thank you so much. Really. It was great meeting you. And I hope that we see each other in person someday.
I hope so too.
We'll have to do like a trauma show. We'll gather all the comics.
We should. Yeah.
I think that would actually probably do really well. I'm sure people would like
okay.
that.
We're going to talk after this. We're going to do it. Yeah.
That sounds great. Yo, Harper, thank you so much for coming on, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Woo. All right, that was Harper-Rose Drummond. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to the podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.